Pam Anderson, former Jefferson County Clerk, running for the Republican nomination to face Democratic Secretary of State Jenna Griswold. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
The most basic question, are Colorado's elections safe and secure?
Our elections are safe and secure, and the outcome of our elections is correct. And we know this because we have public audit boards, public canvass boards, the public, our community members and interested parties work in the elections. And we do all of these steps in Colorado for independent verifiability to give confidence to the voter. And those outcomes are proven through those processes.
That puts you at odds with a good number of people in your party. Colorado Republican Party Chairwoman Christy Brown led a group called FEC United, which has stated that not only is President Biden in office due to election fraud, but that also Democratic Governor Polis and Secretary of State Jenna Griswold are in office due to voter fraud. So I'd like to go through these one by one just to get a clear answer. Is President Biden in office because of voter fraud?
President Biden is not in office because of voter fraud, and I'm unequivocal about that. In Colorado, we have all the verifiability pieces that told us that the outcome was correct. Every voter, and what some folks don't share with you, every voter, regardless of vote method, votes on a voter verified piece of paper. That is your ballot of record. And we don't just trust that. You know, we actually, when we tabulate the results, and those machines in the polling place don't tabulate, they just mark the ballot, print it out, and you look at it and put it in the ballot box. After we tabulate the results, we check and compare until we are confident that that outcome was correct. If it was not correct, we would have conducted a full hand recount.
So just want to make sure that we're very clear on the other two claims. Is Governor Polis in office due to election fraud?
Governor Polis is not in office due to election fraud. Again, our voting system is built on citizen verifiability and auditability. So you don't have to trust my opinion on this. All of the evidence and records prove it.
One last one. Is Secretary of State Jenna Griswold in office due to election fraud?
No, she is not in office due to election fraud. Every candidate on the ballot that goes all the way from issues, pro and con, is on that same ballot, voter verified, paper ballot. The tabulation is audited from an audit that no one else does in our country, but most states do a form of paper ballot auditing, secure, verifiable, and independent.
I have one last question as it relates to claims of election fraud, and I'll move on to some other topics. Because of the fact that your job has been and would be again running elections that people can have faith in, are you willing to support and campaign with fellow Republicans who push the big lie about elections, or is that a deal breaker?
So my path and approach to public policy and public service, both as the Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder for 8 years, I was also an elected municipal clerk, which is somewhat unusual, is a nonpartisan approach. I will campaign and work with anyone that is interested in elections because I know that there's a lot of people out there that have questions, but I believe I'm the one that can speak to the answers and why you can trust it. I don't have to agree with members of my own party, and sometimes I haven't. I've passed secretaries. When we feel like we need to be more on the nonpartisan side, I've stepped up and been the one to say, let's work for the voters, let's work for the process, and make sure that we can provide the access for the voter and the integrity and security around the system to ensure the outcome is correct.
That certainly makes sense in terms of a political philosophy. I'm curious how it works, practically speaking, where if you're one of the Republicans nominees for the state's 4 constitutional offices, those folks often campaign together and work together. Would you feel comfortable campaigning with somebody who pushes the big lie?
So what I feel comfortable is campaigning as myself, as the best candidate for Secretary of State in 2022. You know, you do campaign with lots of people on the campaign trail, and I look forward to campaigning with Jenna Griswold as well, because I do think that there's places where she needs to be held accountable for her partisan activity, being hyper-partisan in the office, that helps to erode the confidence. You know, you can't just be say one thing with your formal public face, and then in a campaign, you know, throw the red meat to the base. I think I'm looking forward to that debate.
you offer a few examples of what you think type of partisanship from Secretary Griswold that we didn't see from previous secretaries of state?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the comparison for the Colorado Secretary of State's office and her campaign, social media and outreach, where she's more divisive than she is in their public face, where she says, oh, I'm, for all the voters. I can tell you that I've worked closely in conjunction with the secretary and the staff. The team there is great. And I believe that she is a more partisan secretary than we've had in quite some time.
I don't think that anybody could fairly make the case that she's not more partisan than her Republican predecessor, Wayne Williams, who I think took an approach of trying to stay above the political frame. I'm curious whether you had the same concerns about partisanship in the office when Republican Scott Gessler was in office. He was certainly quite partisan while he was Secretary of State.
So Scott and I campaigned together, and we didn't always agree on the issues. And I was not afraid to stand up to the secretary, regardless of their party, when I felt it was right for voters. And that was the case with Scott Gessler. I was on the record for supporting our election reform. He was opposed. I think that you can disagree on the issues and not be divisive.
We covered a situation in 2019 where Secretary of State Griswold's office sent a copy of a press release to Planned Parenthood to allow their political director to edit it if he wished before sending it back to them for public release. And we were told at the time that kind of thing happens all the time. This is not a big deal. I'm curious how you view that incident and whether you would feel comfortable pledging publicly that outside groups would not have any influence like that in terms of your decision making and communications.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of interest groups in the world. There's a lot of interest groups as an election official, as an elected official. My record is proven as an election official for Jefferson County, one of the largest and most politically diverse groups, that I'm not going to be putting my finger on the scale for one side or the other. I'm representing the people of Colorado. I plan to represent the people of Colorado and provide voter access and the integrity of the process.
How can voter access and the integrity of the process be improved based on the foundation built by Republicans and Democrats?
Well, I led the county clerks. I was president of the association in 2013. I was a legislative co-chair with my partner, Hillary Hall, in Boulder County. And we worked over several years, but culminating in 2013 and then in some additional bills to make sure that that entire system provides the best system in the country, in my opinion. We provide a ballot to a voter. We verify voters' identity. We have the most robust list maintenance in the country. And we provide vote centers that you can go to throughout your county and get full services as well. And we do it efficiently, effectively, and accurately. We have incredible transparency. Our ballot images and our paper ballots, while protecting voter anonymity, are public. We have verifiability. I'm very proud of this system. But election officials across the state, Republican, Democratic, and unaffiliated, we have unaffiliated local election officials, know that that process can always get better. There's always something we can do. I piloted and implemented at the county level signature verification audits, a quality assurance check to make sure our judges weren't getting tired, that our training was robust, and that the work was doing what it's supposed to be doing, allowing voters to have its access, but making sure that someone who wasn't eligible to vote that ballot didn't do it. I would take that statewide.
What do you make of the situation in Mesa County with Tina Peters? So for folks who may not be aware of that situation, she's subject of a number of investigations. The accusations that she let an unauthorized person access the voting system, made some copies, those ended up in the hands of right-wing conspiracy theorists, including the Pillow Guy. She then flies out of town under protection of the Pillow Guy. It sounds like a movie. She is one of our county clerks in Colorado, and probably the only one that most people could name.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because we have 64 county clerks in Colorado, and I was the executive director for the Colorado County Clerks Association after I was term limited from the office. I love supporting local election officials, and county clerks are, in my opinion, the hardest working elected officials in the state. They do so much for their communities and for their customers and for the citizens. But I was extremely disappointed when I saw what was happening in Mesa County, and I look forward to seeing how the criminal investigation proceeds. This is what I know. No matter if you're a county clerk or a secretary of state, if you run for these offices, you have to know that there's a public trust involved, and there's a responsibility to understand the laws and the rules and the statutes that govern the job that you do. And the county clerks have a lot of it. And so you have to learn the work and understand it, because violating and breaking those rules ignorance is not an excuse. And so I look forward to hearing more about the investigation. I believe that if she had questions about her own election, the paper ballot is the record. We have seen that happen in Colorado, where they review the local election official reviews the paper ballot record to validate that the outcome is correct. I'm not sure why she didn't do that instead.
A related issue, the idea of outside audits. Are you supportive of Secretary Griswold's pronouncement to not allow third-party audits like what we saw in Arizona with the cyber ninjas?
Yeah, I do believe that the physical paper ballot needs to remain within the chain of custody. That is fundamental to election security and the security of all sorts of different systems, not just elections. So that is fundamental. What we've provided in Colorado is an accessible, verifiable tool to be used. That's called the digital image. You can inspect ballots, but you can also get the artifact as a digital image. And you've seen counties do that at the local level, where they've run a parallel audit, a parallel tabulation with that. That is something that the local election official can provide. But I do agree that that chain of custody for physical release of election systems or the ballot of record should not be done by any sort of interest group.
Democrats in Congress right now are trying to advance the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act to expand the Voting Rights Act to try and end gerrymandering. It would issue mandates around early voting and mail-in voting. Republicans in the Senate may filibuster it. They say that it intrudes on states' rights to conduct elections. Based on what you know of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, are you supportive of it?
I'm not supportive of that act as it's written. It's very long, and so it's important to read through it. And there are elements in there that I believe should remain at the local level. And I support and work, I'm in Chaffee County now, I support and work in elections jurisdictions to implement best practices to bring elements of our voting model across the country. And I think that there are voting cultures in different states, and you need to do that with confidence. Last year, we saw an unprecedented issue with our public health and COVID, and we saw some things happen for access to your constitutional right in primaries in certain states that needed to be resolved by expanding the option like we have for everybody to get to a mail ballot. I think states are looking at that. They need to build the system around it. The legislation at the federal level goes too far too fast. You need to bring the voters along with confidence, and it eliminates certain protections like signature verification. I testified in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives about mail ballot, and I recommended some of these verifiability tools like our robust signature verification for voter verification. And those things need to stay intact to make sure the checks and balances are all there in the electoral process.
One last question from me, and then I'd be curious if you think there's anything else of importance that we've missed. In your critique of Secretary of State Jenna Griswold's performance and what you describe as her hyperpartisanship, do you think that anything that she is doing is a threat to the integrity of Colorado's voting systems, or is it just simply a matter of style?
So I think that, my opponents goes beyond style. I think there is some lack of substance and leadership there. I was really shocked to see the degree to which she utilized federal funds for communication and raising her profile for the outreach and media. We've worked with past secretaries to jointly do voter education and outreach, and that was very disturbing to me. I've been an advocate for elections funding at the federal level, but it's the reason why I advocate for that money to go directly to the local officials because they're hurting down there. And we need to make sure that they get the funds that they need to operate and do the same level of voter education and outreach. So I think it goes beyond that. I'm a leader. The folks that I work with, my teams and my past jobs, as well as leading the Clerks Association, as well as leading the clerks in leadership. I don't need yes people around me. I want people to challenge me, and that's important to me as well. And finally, I really believe that we need a secretary that goes back to restoring the trust in the electoral process, cut out the hyperpartisan rhetoric, and make sure that that confidence isn't eroded for voters.
Anything else that you would like to add, something of importance that we haven't touched on? You've been very generous with your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention?
No, it's been great to talk to you today, Kyle, and I hope to continue talking to you on the campaign trail.
I would also point out for anybody who's watching the unedited version on YouTube that about halfway through, I noticed that apparently my video is not working, but that Pam was kind enough to not point that out. So we'll put up a message about that. My apologies to you, Pam, for that, and to everybody at home. You get my voice, you get audio and video from her. Pam Anderson, thank you for your time.
Thank you.